Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So today I welcome Jordan O and Donna Emmett from ORA. What's up there, folks?
Hey, how you doing?
Thanks for joining us. Jordan is the director of sales at ORA, and Donna is a sales rep. But before we get into the conversation with them, I want to thank the sponsors for the show, both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. I really appreciate them supporting the live stream, and I also appreciate you viewers out there. I see there's a bunch of you coming into the live stream right now for tuning in. So as always, please spread the word. Hit that like button. Got 34 people watching right now and only 7 likes, so let's catch up to the number of viewers in terms of likes so we can get more people watching the live stream. And as always, we always encourage comments and questions in the chat. So guys, thanks again for joining us. We were just talking before the show that you kind of missed the brunt of the hurricane that passed through Florida recently, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were very, very lucky. It's always kind of a roll of the dice. But yeah, for us, it was probably the best case scenario for a hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that's kind of an interesting scenario, right? Down in Florida, you guys are kind of prone to those big storms. What kind of power backup setup do you folks have down there to kind of prevent any sort of major disaster if the power's out for a number of days?
We've got a gigantic generator that can support completely the entire facility. We've also got kind of more smaller subsidiary ones for each of the different hatcheries. We've got a very dedicated team that will come out here even with the wind blowing and the rain pouring down and making sure things are plugged in, make sure water's running. It can get pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do to keep the keep the animals alive, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And, we just have a very passionate group of people here who very much care.
So ORA has been around a long time. You guys are sort of like a pioneer, right, in terms of aquaculture, corals and clams and captive raised fish. But, there might be some out there that are not as familiar with you folks as I am. So maybe we should kind of start the stream off with maybe you guys giving an overview of the operation down there in terms of ORA and your facilities, types of products you have, etc.
Yeah, I mean, really the kind of quick and dirty history, if you will. Back in 1996, we started here on the Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute in Fort Pierce, Florida. So for people who don't really know where that is, it's about 2 hours north of Fort Lauderdale or directly across the state from like Tampa. And here we've been for these last 26 years. Just putting out all sorts of marine aquacultured ornamental fish for not only kind of our domestic aquarists, but also worldwide demand for marine aquaculture.
So let's so you mentioned fish. Let's kind of like start with that part of the business. How big is your operation compared to other types of operations that raise fish in the United States? What do you guys stand? Are you guys like the largest?
I mean, I'd like to say that we are. I mean, I personally haven't been to kind of the other aquaculture facilities that do, very similar items that we do. But we're situated on 8 acres here on our campus, tens of thousands of gallons of water. We've got, at one point in time, to my understanding, the largest land-based coral greenhouse in the world. So, I mean, I would say, and just even the scale of the number of employees we have, we're a pretty large organization for sure.
So I got a couple of comments. Paul Graybeard of Reef says, I need some of the classic SPS like a true ORA pearlberry in my life. That's one of my favorites. And
oh, we all, yeah.
We'll get into the coral stuff. And Peter T, will you be seeing more ORA flame angels in the future?
Fingers crossed. I certainly hope so.
Gotcha. So in terms of like fish, your biggest type of fish is the clownfish, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's probably the largest variety of fish that we produce, but it certainly isn't the only variety of fish. I think that's a common misconception. Based on our logo, a lot of people have the common misconception that that's what we kind of center our attention around and all that we produce. But in actuality, I mean, we are producing everything for beginner hobbyists all the way through advanced hobbyists and experience levels. So starting with damsels, gobies, blennies, we're doing filefish, and then the more advanced kind of species with the dragonets, the angelfish, rabbitfish, and even sharks.
Rajendra Bachu, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Looking on from Trinidad, got my best breeding clownfish from ORA. I mean, the variety of clownfish. Yeah, the variety of clownfish that you guys have is amazing. I mean, how many different types of clownfish do you guys are currently breeding at this point in time?
I think that number is like ever changing.
Yeah.
We're constantly doing different variants of designers. I think within the last year or so, we actually came out with the hybrid storm, which is a mix between an Ocellaris and a Percula. So I think, what was our last number?
I want to see somewhere around 150, but
wow.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of different designers out there. Subtle variations, larger variations, cross species, and it's ever expanding for sure.
I mean, clownfish are like one of my favorite species of fish to have in my reef tank.
What's your favorite, Keith?
Which one is my favorite? I would have to say the Mocha Storm. I have a pair of the orange Storm and the I'll say the orange and the Mocha because I got a pair of those two. They're in my Peninsula tank, and I think they're awesome looking fish. I mean, I also have some Ocellaris clownfish. I also have a I got a pair of Da Vinci clownfish. I'm assuming that's Da Vinci is an ORA. I mean, everything is like ORA, right? I mean, pretty much every clownfish out there, designer clownfish for the most part. Is that correct? Is anybody else doing this?
I would say our version of that would be like a gladiator. There are some trade names that kind of get tossed around. But a lot of stuff did originate from here. I mean, I would say the Picasso that we got from the Solomons in around 2004 really opened the door to a lot of different types of designer clownfish. the snowflake. Just that was kind of like the explosion of different varieties you could have. Kind of started right around that same time period out of here.
Yeah, there was a woman named Donnie, and she had her like Donnie's Picassos. Does that ring a bell? That there was some breeder down in North Carolina,
North
I think.
Carolina or somewhere.
Yeah, was that a an ORA? Did she start with ORA? What do you call it?
Lineage or broodstock. I'll be
Broodstock.
honest. I'm not too familiar with kind of where her fish originated from. I know that she, I think, trademarked that fish, or at least attempted to at one point.
Yeah, I mean it's just amazing to me in terms of the different variations. Anything new in terms of clownfish coming around? I mean, any new storm type of clownfish that's gonna really kind of make a major splash, or do you guys keeping quiet on that sort of thing?
I would say just recently, our hailstorm is probably one of my most favorite fish that I see on the market right now. It's just kind of a real nice minimalistic fish. You've got the white, you've got some, you like the mocha storm variety. I mean, you've got these spots that are very kind of ombre, burnt amber. It's a gorgeous fish.
So so you mentioned you guys are raising a lot more than just clownfish. How do you guys determine what fish to raise captively? Is there a kind of a thing in the hobby where folks are really, trying to get a certain fish that's maybe like a wild caught fish, and now it's becoming difficult to catch that certain wild caught fish? Does that drive decisions in terms of what to raise captively, or has that got nothing to do with it?
It plays in part to how we kind of determine what's going to be raised here. Our main objectives, I think there's three of them. One, they have to produce on a commercial scale in order to meet the demand of the hobby and the industry. And then sustainability, are we going to be able to bring in broodstock for these fish when needed to continue production? And then I think overall success and how the hobbyist is going to find success with those fish. Are they going to be difficult to keep and raise, or are they going to be fairly simple for the hobbyist once they leave our facility?
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's a very different world these days in terms of, when you're going to a local fish store, you're shopping for fish online. And, the price of fish has just gone up so much because of freight costs. And I guess the COVID thing had a lot to do with it. Has that impacted your operation at all in terms of what's been going on generally in the marketplace in terms of freight costs and COVID, or no?
I mean, kind of like what you're saying. I mean, the pandemic was really, really good for our industry, in so many words. But one of the benefits that I think that we had is that when airlines shut down from freighting in corals and fish from overseas, all those wild caught animals, domestically, we were really the only kind of shop in town with kind of the volume and the ability to provide a number of different species for these stores to stay in operation, and all while keeping the kind of the costs down.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. It's just amazing to me what's going on with some of the stuff with fish prices and availability.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it over the years. I mean, you said you've been in here for about 30 years. I mean, it is funny how like the pendulum swings, and the industry chooses one thing every year that's like the hottest, most desirable thing. Back in early 2000s, it was like acans, and then it was zoanthids and micromusas, and then now the torch coral is like the thing to get. People have opened their wallets to the most absurd prices for some of these torches.
All right, we got a coral question from Rolly's Reef Ranch, but I'm going to actually ask you guys, and we're going to get to that question, but Barry Gross Sr. has a fish-related question. I want them to be able to breed and sustainably produce all the reef hobbyists kept fish. ORA is off to a great start. All right, I'm not sure that's a question. Maybe it was more of a statement. All right, here's another question for you from me. In terms of selling fish and in terms of the size of the fish that you guys sell, my understanding is that you sell fish only grown to full size. Is that correct?
No, that is a weird question, but no, it's not. I would say the vast majority of the animals we sell are juveniles, actually.
Okay. Maybe I read that on your website. Maybe I read that someplace else, but I was under the impression that you guys are only selling full-grown size fish. But yeah, that's definitely makes sense.
Size fish would be very expensive, both on the kind of the production side and, believe it or not, the shipping side. I think people would be shocked, like how much it really costs to ship animals overnight. And, a larger fish needs more water, which weighs more. But juveniles, we tend to stick around the 1.5-inch size for most of our fish that we raise.
So Blue Reef has got a question. What took so long to get other places to sell ORA? Glad to see Saltwater Aquarium now selling. I was only able to buy from Live Aquaria, and they're always out of the stock. So yeah, where can folks get ORA stuff besides local fish stores, like online? Is it for the most part what vendors can they find your stuff on?
I think we've definitely expanded in the last year specifically. So hobbyists can now find ORA livestock on both saltwateraquarium.com, well, 3 actually, saltwateraquarium.com, Algae Barn. Most people go there for their live feeds and supplements. And then you also have Ocean's Garden.
Correct, yeah. Which highlights, a lot of pretty much only aquacultured animals on their side.
I mean, would you guys say the local fish stores are pretty much the primary source of your primary customers in terms of taking your fish versus online retailers?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we 100% support the brick and mortar. I mean, they really are. They're the reason anybody's in the hobby. So they are very, very important to kind of our business model and our relationships.
Here's another question, Rashindra. Is it natural for a pair of gladiator clowns to produce Wyoming whites? So, I mean, can you crossbreed these fish? Is that done?
Oh, sure. I mean, if it's certainly within the Ocellaris complex, any of those designers will be just fine. I mean, to them, they're just another Ocellaris. It doesn't really matter what they look like. But you will be surprised kind of how genetics plays into it and kind of all the different patterns that are possible kind of with mixed breeding, mainly because, if you know anything about genetics, some of those patterns may be kind of locked in the DNA and you don't really know where that fish came from or what those parents came from. And so it can be really full of surprises.
So I was talking briefly about prices and stuff in terms of what's been going on with the, wild caught fish and freight costs and COVID and all that stuff. But there are some captive bred species out there, not produced by you guys, that have like these huge, price tags, and I'm assuming that's because they're rare and they're difficult to get to breed and to raise. Do you guys have any fish? I mean, the hybrid purple yellow tang has got like a $10,000 price tag, something crazy like that. Any fish like that coming out of ORA that's going to, have a more robust price versus some of the other stuff that you guys sell?
What do you think?
I would say with a more robust price, but certainly not a $10,000 price. So I think probably the most expensive fish that we raise would be one of our sharks, and it's the short-tailed nurse shark. And it comes at a fraction of that cost, but not every hobbyist is going to have a system size needed, to house a 24 to 30-inch shark.
I mean, yeah, I would say that we've done a pretty good job of keeping costs low. I mean, there certainly are some fish that have the value based mainly on their production costs, their availability in the industry. And so you will see kind of a higher price that reflects that. But overall, the prices definitely come down pretty quick, and we try to keep it, as close to like a wild caught price as we can. And, obviously, the more people we can get into the hobby without kind of big price barriers, the better for everybody.
Yeah, I hear you. What about like captive raised yellow tangs and captive raised regal angelfish? You know, I have a regal angelfish that's captive raised that you know, had a hefty price tag. It has some serious misbars on it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to keep it because it was being a little naughty and started nipping at all my frags. So I found a new home for it. But yeah, what about those two fish in particular? Any plans to you know, have captive raised yellow tangs and regal angelfish down the road, or?
I mean, I would say we've got our sights on all those fish. I mean, they are definitely the goals, kind of a very aquaculture facility to be able to produce those and keep those for hobbyists. I personally absolutely love a Red Sea Regal. I mean, I think that is one of the most just breathtaking fish out there. But really, I think our primary focus currently, in addition to kind of the R&D and getting those new species to market, is really just producing more of the species that we currently raise. You know, going back to the pandemic, one thing that it taught us was that there is a huge demand for just kind of all the regular stuff, the bread and butter stuff, the blennies, the gobies. The world needs more of those. And so we've done, you know, scaled up as much as we can to really kind of help provide that on a global scale.
Barry Goss Sr. said, let me know when you have yellow tangs for less than a Benjamin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The glory days back when you could get those.
Yeah.
So cheap back in the day.
Yeah, like $30, yellow tangs. I mean, God, beautiful, gorgeous fish. Well, maybe who knows? Maybe down the line we'll see that that ban lifted in Hawaii. But yeah, that's one.
That touches on a really good point, Keith. That, you know, I think people forget that with aquacultured animals, we are actually really ingrained and intertwined with wild collection. I mean, you can't have aquaculture without it. So it's very important to think about those things when you're just thinking about, oh, we should just stop collection in the world. I mean, if that was the case, if those countries stopped allowing wild collection, you would see less aquacultured fish on the market.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point. Are you guys getting requests for certain fish that hobbyists would like to see besides the yellow tang and Barry Goss Sr. asking for the yellow tangs? Any other requests coming your way in terms of what people would like to see in the future?
What do you get every day?
I certainly think that is our #1 request. I think behind probably
Flame angel.
A flame angel.
That'd be nice.
You know, so we are, you know, working extensively with the dwarf angelfish, and trying to get that into more of a commercial scale. Right now, we're doing limited batches, a few releases, probably, you know, once a year. We'll do kind of a limited release of 1 or 2 specific types of angels that we're starting production on, and then we get into full scale kind of commercial production on those. I think another one is wrasses. You know, people really want to see wrasses. I think from a hobbyist standpoint myself, I've pushed us to do some wrasses, kind of bring the R&D over to that, as well as more inverts. I am a huge fan, and thinking that every tank needs a good cleanup crew, and you need inverts to do that.
Yeah, we just recently added kind of one more element to that cleanup crew. We have a captive bred sea cucumber now that'll be available.
Cool, very nice. Are you getting a couple more requests here for fish? JAH's Reef, yellow-eyed coal tang, quadruple exclamation point. Mike Hoppa, copper band butterfly. Those are a couple of requests there. So talking about let's talk about coloration of captive bred fish. You know, from what I've seen in terms of personally with the Regal, what I've seen in person with the captive bred yellow tangs, you know, they don't seem to be as colorful as their wild caught counterparts. I mean, obviously the clownfish are vivid in terms of their coloration, and maybe that's a whole different ball game. But why is it like a lot of the captive bred fish that I've seen out there don't seem to have the same kind of coloration as the wild caught variety? Is there something specific in terms of why that is the case, or is it just diet, or?
You know, I'll start real quick. Just say, I'll be saying that, you know, I'll have to disagree with you. I do feel like we're at a really incredible point in marine aquaculture where you are seeing fish that are as colorful as kind of their wild counterparts. I mean, I'll use your example. I mean, I have seen the yellow tanks, for example, are clear, essentially when they're
Right.
small, but I think you're going to see that in the wild. And then I've seen them develop in home aquariums where their color is just as, canary yellow as their wild caught counterparts. Certainly in the early days of aquaculture, clownfish were kind of pale and peachy in color. And it wasn't until we started really learning about diet that changed everything, and that's why you have such very, very vibrant clownfish now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an observation that I've made in terms of seeing the fish. But a lot of the fish that that I have seen are very young fish. So maybe that is true in terms of the age of the fish has something to do with that. I had no idea that was potentially the case. What about diet? What do you guys feed your fish in terms of your facility? Does it depend on the type of fish that you have, or are you guys kind of just generally feeding certain types of food to the fish? Any and any recommendations out there to the hobbyists that have your fish?
So we, like many hobbyists, feed a variety of foods. Most of our clownfish, I would say, are raised on a pelletized diet with nutritional factors that, we combine here on site, kind of to balance everything out, give it the coloration that it has, and kind of help it along. And then you also have, your frozen foods and even fresh foods. So, our sharks, they eat a variety of foods, including, fresh foods that you could get from the seafood department at your local grocery store. But for a majority of our fish, they're raised on a kind of a pre-prepared diet that most hobbyists could find in their local fish store. New Life Spectrum TDO pellets would be great sources for a pelletized diet. Hikari frozen feeds would be great, just to kind of mix things up a bit.
Yeah, we like the Hikari mysis because they tend to be a much smaller shrimp, particularly for your smaller fish. They do great.
Yeah, I just personally I try to feed a variety. I feed mysis cubes, brine cubes. That's all frozen. Then I make my own like homemade fish food, like just pretty much throwing everything that I can find from the local supermarket in terms of just fish, and I put it in a like a meat grinder and grind it all up, and even nori. I feed all my fish a lot of nori, so I just think that the variety certainly helps.
Integral for sure. Yeah, frozen flakes, pellets, all that stuff. It's going to be great, and our fish love eating all that stuff.
Yep. So another question I had for you guys about the captive bred fish is what was the question? Oh yeah, in terms of the angelfish, right? I mentioned the regal angelfish that I had that was nipping at some of my frags, and you guys also have some captive bred cherub angelfish, and coral beauty, the flameback angels. Those fish have been known to, not be totally reef safe, right? With coral nipping and all that stuff. I read someplace, I don't know if this is true or not, that certain captive raised angelfish might not necessarily have that propensity to nip at corals. Is that a myth? Or it just depends, or does it depend on the fish itself?
Yeah, I mean, I really do feel that it's challenging to breed out learned behaviors that are millions of years old. So you will see even our lemon peel angels. We definitely try to tell aquarists that they are reef safe with caution. Just like a wild caught one, they may discover that your acan is the most delicious food it's ever had and proceed to just eat it up, and then ignore the pelleted food you tried feeding it. So there's definitely going to be some risks, I think, involved. Aptasia eating filefish, for example, is another one where you've got anecdotes of aquarists who have them in full-blown aquapora reefs, and they don't bother anything. But we've had them in a trade show for 36 hours, and they've completely decimated our aquapora. So it's just kind of a personality, fish to fish. Roll the dice to kind of see which ones are going to be good and which ones, like you had, that are just kind of a little naughty.
Yeah, you know, I think I had read that that little tidbit about potentially certain captive raised fish might not necessarily act like their you know, their cousins in the wild. So that might have led me to be a little bit bold and to put that
Well, I
fish.
mean, you hear it all the time with clownfish. People are like, "Oh, you know, because it's captive bred, it doesn't go in anemones." But you know, we haven't found that to be the case at all. I mean, I think the biggest problem is people try to pair a clownfish with an anemone that it would never associate with in the wild, and so there's really not that like immediate connection that you would get with, say, like a maroon and a bubble tip, you know, which will just go into it immediately.
Yeah, a couple of different comments here about the filefish. Peter T, not an angelfish, but I picked up an ORA white spotted filefish. I'm not gonna.
Hey,
I'm not.
right,
I'm not.
right there.
Right there. I'm not going to try to pronounce a scientific name, but super cool little guys and have been reef safe so far. And then Paul B, dude, I had a filefish destroy a lot of coral. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I will say, going back to your earlier commenter, the white spot filefish, I like to say it's almost too reef safe. I mean, they really don't bother anything, and no one who has one has ever said anything but glowing reviews about them. They're just an incredible little fish.
yeah, I've never tried a filefish. I never, I don't know why, but yeah, they look really
Start with
cool.
this guy. Start with him right there.
Start with them, and it's not going
He'll
to,
have the most personality in your entire aquarium.
and not going to be nipping at my acros.
No, no,
You guarantee that.
I do. I'll stand behind that. Yeah, you're probably going to want more than one. I mean, they're just so much fun.
Oh, cool.
And kind of going back to your earlier question too about those, you know, you asked about, you know, how do we decide what fish to put into production? I mean, the white spot pygmy filefish is a great example of a fish that's completely not on anyone's radar, really. I mean, it's kind of been in the industry, but it's considered a temperate water fish from Japan. It's not something that you see on every single Aquarius fish list. But we were able to produce it at a commercial scale, introduce it to Aquarius, and in my opinion, I think it's one of the best fish you can have in your home aquarium.
I think it's certainly one of the most popular at every trade show.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the utility for that kind of fish? Just so people know, in terms of why would somebody want, besides the personality, have that kind of filefish in your tank?
That's it, really.
Oh
For
yeah.
the white spot.
Yeah. I mean, they stay small, right? So it's a pygmy filefish. They stay the top off maybe around 2 inches at most. Great personality, reef safe. You know, people are always looking for fish that aren't going to eat that, you know, $200 torch that they just bought, or I should say $2,000 torch. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of personality there. You've got definitely two different types of fish that you want for your aquarium, right? Like something with personality or color or utility. And in this case, he's all personality in a little package.
Yep.
So a couple more comments about the filefish. Abe from Coral Euphoria, what's up there, Abe? I bought 4 biota aptasia eating filefish, 2 maybe 3 eat aptasia. 1 is a definite acro nipper. So I'm not sure what kind of filefish that is, unless there is a specific one that eats aptasia. And then
Yeah, an aptasia eating filefish, or like the matted leather jacket is another name for him.
oh, so that's an actual name, is the aptasia eating filefish.
Oh yeah, and if you want utility, boom, there you go. That is all utility.
There you go. And Bert Minshew, I have aptasia eating filefish in both tanks, 1 in SPS. Huge colonies. They have been great except for 1 caught living room, 1 eating sweepers off my Space Invader. Yeah.
Well, which probably isn't a bad thing. That's a pretty aggressive coral at times.
Yes, it is. It's an interesting coral. I have the coral in one of my systems, and it does not like my display tank. It does fine in my frag tanks, and I think there's probably some fish that are bothering it. That's why. All right, here's a non-fish related question. Paul B, do you guys happen to breed Bergia nudibranches?
I would say we're breeding them. We do want to work with them. We do want to bring them to. I mean, they're similar to your peppermint shrimp, your aptasia files. There is a need for people to get rid of their aptasia problems, and they're just one kind of piece of that puzzle. And we would love to be able to have more of those.
What do you guys breed that you would recommend for folks that are trying to get rid of aptasia? I mean, is the do you guys breed an aptasia eating filefish, or do you have?
We do.
Okay, you do. Would you recommend that, or like peppermint shrimp? Can I have peppermint shrimp that do eat Aptasia, and you guys also breed peppermint shrimp, correct?
They have 2 species. What would you say, Donna?
So as we kind of mentioned, you know, an Aptasiophile lends the risk of eating your acros, you know, eating your corals. Whereas like the Monaco peppermint shrimp, we did pretty extensive testing here at our facility to determine whether or not it would actively eat Aptasia, and it does. And it would be a reef safe kind of option.
I mean, I think you would want, my personal opinion as a hobbyist myself, you know, maybe like a 1-2 kind of punch. You know, I would include peppermint shrimp in there. I would include a Aptasia eating filefish, and then just be prepared to take the filefish out when your Aptasia problem has gone away.
I mean, will they essentially wither away and die because they don't have any Aptasia to eat? Is that the issue, or no?
Oh no, I think they just develop a fondness for your most expensive corals at times.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
The peppermint shrimps just, you know, kind of hide and tend to get eaten by everybody.
Yeah.
But they do a very good job if you get a good quantity of them.
Yeah, if you have like a flame hawkfish or something like that, then you might not have too many of those peppermint shrimp around anymore.
Right. And if you've got a big 200-gallon aquarium and you put 1 peppermint in there to like help your Aptasia problem, I think you're still going to have an Aptasia problem.
Bert says, Keith, I've had these filefish for a long time and both decimated all Aptasia in both tanks. They keep it from coming back. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Peppermints have been pretty successful for me. Do peppermints also go after other pests on corals? Like I've heard that they could potentially, you know, help eat in terms of acro-eating flatworm eggs. Is that something that you guys have seen with the peppermints that you raise, or is that something that you don't have any evidence of?
I wouldn't say we have any kind of evidence of that. We don't think we've ever really tried it to see if that works.
A problem to test it on.
Yeah. But yeah, I would have my doubts about that. I would think peppermint shrimp are just too seclusive. You know, they just kind of want to hide, and you're not really going to see them out in the open, kind of winding their way through your acropora branches.
Gotcha. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about some clams. So you guys, you know, have been, I guess, raising agriculture clams for a very long time, and you've got some great different varieties there. You know, I mean, years and years ago, when I was keeping reef tanks, it was rather easy for me to keep clams alive. You know, and I think it was because I always bought these very large clams. They weren't, you know, on the small side, and I haven't tried a clam in like maybe 4 or 5 years. But I think all the clams that I've tried, you know, more recently were on the small size. Is it just a challenge to try to keep a clam alive because of the size? If it's really small, has anything changed over the years, or am I just like completely, you know, spastic when it comes to trying to keep a clam? And you know, I mean, so I guess my question is, has anything changed over the years in terms of the hardiness of the clams out there and the stuff that you guys raise?
I don't think so.
I wouldn't say so at all. I think maybe collection methods may, you know, vary depending on, particularly with wild caught ones. In my experience, I would say a lot of people struggle more with the larger clams recently. The smaller ones we have, it really kind of depends species to species. So if you were to try yourself, say, a Hoppapus clam,
Yep.
Keith, I think you'd be just fine. I mean, I could ship it to you in a wet paper towel. It would get lost in the mail. It would find on your doorstep. You put it in your tank. It would still be fine. I mean, that's how tough that species are. Duresa is another great species. I think that most hobbyists, if they're wanting to kind of get their feet wet with clams,
Yep.
would be a great choice. The Maximas and Croceas can be a little bit more sensitive. You know, they're just found in much higher light areas, and you know, for whatever reason, just tend to be a little bit more sensitive of a species of clam.
All right. Back to one quick fish question, and then we'll go back to the clam discussion here. But who's asking this question? Paul, Great Bitter Reef. Any ideas for fish that may eat Bryopsis? Any specific fish that may eat Bryopsis?
I don't think anything eats Bryopsis. I think toothbrushes, elbow grease.
Garbage can.
I used back in the day, and some of your older listeners will know Kent magnesium. I used that for whatever my understanding was. There was something in there that when you dosed it at certain high levels, it would rapidly deteriorate your bryopsis and only bryopsis. I mean, your soft corals may bleach a little bit, but it was the most effective thing that I've ever used.
Peter T is saying lettuce noodle bronx for bryopsis. I also know that some folks have had success using sea urchins to mow down bryopsis, but those can also mow down corals, push them over at least.
Wear them as a hat.
Yeah. Give the clam. All right, so Barry Goss Sr. said you got to give the clam the right real estate for it to thrive. Just surviving isn't the right answer. Yeah, it's funny. I've always wanted to keep an ORA black Maxima clam.
Ooh.
That was always my dream, and I always just struck out every time I tried to put one of those things in my tank. I would have other clams in the tank, and I think it was just maybe the size of the clams that I was getting were on the smaller side versus the other clams. But yeah, I mean, what would you guys say in terms of somebody like me who seems to not have the touch when it comes to clams? What is the optimal kind of conditions for a clam? Obviously, sand bed helps, right? Any other advice in terms of keeping clams successfully, in a reef tank?
I mean, I don't particularly think that there is some sort of recipe for keeping clams. Some people have great success with clams and some people don't. I do 100% believe, it's 100% going to be dependent on the species, as well as probably where they come from. May play a factor as well, and how those tank conditions that you're trying to put them in are relative to the environment they came from. So I think the best answer I can give is research is absolute key on the species you plan on keeping.
Yeah, I mean, some species also, don't do well just immediately being put on the sand bed. A lot of people try to move clams around. I mean, really, they're a very kind of set it and forget it type of animal, in my opinion. You want to put them up on the Maximas or Chryseas, kind of up on your rock work, and just be prepared that where you put it is where it's going to stay. Some of your larger, heavier clams, Duraces, Gygus, they'll do fine on your sand beds. I think the more full spectrum lighting you can have will really help. A lot of people love that just solid blue look, and I think it may be something in the spectrum there that clams just aren't receiving. That a more full spectrum, halide T5 kind of spectrum would really help out with.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I use. I'm not into the whole blue light thing. But what about feeding? Do you guys recommend feeding some specific, target feeding clams a specific food?
Shocker, we don't actually feed our clams.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask that, because they've heard that, under 2 inches, you got to feed them phytoplankton or else they die. We raise them just fine at that size without any additional feeding. And kind of what helped bolster that is there was a guy in Australia who was raising clams, Maxima clams, in his carport, with made up salt water that he was making himself. He didn't feed his clams. And he's literally raising spat up to the same size we are and didn't feed at all. So it's not going to hurt. You're really going to benefit the other animals in your tank. You're going to see an abundance of sponges and feather dusters and copepods. Your clams will get some of that too, but I don't think it's absolutely essential.
In terms of specific clams, a couple of clams that I love. One is a blue squamosa, and you guys have a blue squammy, right? You guys have captive raised blue squamosas, correct?
We have the hybrid.
Yeah, so we don't actually raise any of the blue squamosas, but as you've probably seen in some other videos, we do have this really beautiful Maxima squamosa hybrid out in our coral greenhouse.
Oh wow, I'm gonna have to check that out. What is that? So is that like a true cross between the two?
Yeah. About 7 years ago, we had just kind of a fluke combination that came out. Only a handful of these clams appeared, and they really had both kind of features of the maxima and the squamosa, and this one in particular was just it's breathtaking. It's really, really a beautiful clam.
And that's available right now out in stores?
No. This was like a one-off. We did sell those when they came out to a very select few people who purchased them. But this one we kind of kept for ourselves.
What was the retail on that clam? Can you share?
Oh, I'll be honest, I don't remember, but I'm sure it was several hundred. It depends on the markets. I mean, you'll find that some stores on the West Coast are completely different prices from the East Coast. I mean, it's pretty all over the place.
What about teardrop clams? Is that something that's possible to raise to aquaculture, like a teardrop clam? I mean, I've had a couple of like gorgeous wild caught teardrop clams, like blue teardrop clams that were just like so freaking stunning. That
early 2000s, you saw those everywhere.
Yes, yeah. Is that something that you can't raise captively, or it's just hard to find them right now?
I mean, where we have our clam farm out in the Marshall Islands, I just don't think that pattern and that I think it's like a whole new species right now. Tridacna noe, I think is what it is. I just don't think they're available for broodstock essentially out in that area, not naturally found.
Yeah, that was like I think I might have paid like $400 for one of those blue teardrop clams, but man, that was worth it.
Oh yeah, and that was
it's big too.
I mean, that would be cheap now for that clam.
I think I got it from Reefer Madness. I don't know if you guys remember that store. That was like,
oh yeah, Reefer Madness, Clams Direct, all those old guys.
Yeah. I got it from Reefer Madness, but yeah, that was pretty sweet. All right, let's talk about Acropora, and I think the first time you guys came on my radar really was when I was really getting into some of the named Acropora, like the ORA Red Planet, the ORA Hawkins, the ORA Pearlberry. Those are, I mean, I remember like you guys kind of like started doing releases of those corals, and I felt like I hit the jackpot when I found some of those corals in my local fish store, like the ORA Red Planet and the Hawkins. I thought those were just amazing corals. And so are you guys still farming those classics? Do you still have them on your farm?
We do. Those are actually still in active production, shipping to local fish stores across the country, and even globally. Well, no, sorry, not the greenhouse corals, but yeah, those classics are still up and running, and definitely those three I think are prime to the ORA classics list.
Still get me excited too. I love a good classic Red Planet. Hawkins in the sun is stunning.
Year round.
Every year, yeah.
Year round. And then, the tricolor Belita was another stunner from that classic list as well. And then the shortcake. And the shortcake we just re-released last year. So yeah, I mean, they're still up and running. Probably the same exact lineage that you had with that original order in your local fish store.
Can they change in terms of coloration over the years? Because I remember when I first, had the my first ORA Red Planet coral that I picked up, the frag, grew into this gorgeous red tabling, colony under metal halides, 400 watt, 20K radium bulbs, and and it didn't have like a lot of green in it at all. It was just really bright red. And today I still have a. I broke that tank down, so that coral's long gone. But I acquired another Red Planet from somebody, and it's the coloration on that frag was not really close to what it was when I first acquired it. I mean, can it morph in different systems and kind of change in terms of the way it exhibits colors?
It certainly can. I mean, we see it in our coral greenhouse probably once a year. It goes from this super vibrant red kind of through the summertime. But once it hits winter, it starts to get more of that green base. You start to see that come through. And then right around spring into early summer again, you start to get that red coloration. So I think it's just a warmer spectrum tends to bring out more reds, whereas the bluer the spectrum, you tend to see more of that green.
Yeah, and with kind of the variety of different lighting that aquarists have, the different flow patterns they have in their systems, it is kind of remarkable how different corals can look, tank to tank.
What do you guys think about in terms of imposters out there, right? You know, there's the whole coral name game, and people get corals and then they slap their own names on them and stuff like that, or else they'll acquire a coral and they'll put a popular name on that coral just to, you know, for resale purposes. You know, when I first got the ORA pearlberry, I grew it in a couple of really big colonies. It was just awesome. I mean, it was like probably my one of my favorite corals in my tank at the time.
Sure.
Was the pearlberry. And then you know, when I broke that tank down and started up again a number of years ago, you know, I was on the hunt for another ORA pearlberry. But you know, since then I thought I bought a couple of you know, legit frags that actually turned out not to be legit ORA pearlberry frags. How do you, what are you guys' thoughts in terms of that, in terms of you know, potentially non-ORA corals getting that label thrown onto them?
Go more. What do you got?
I think it happens a lot.
Yeah, I know it does.
People associate, you know, our name with value and kind of integrity within the industry, knowing that our corals are going to be almost,
They're getting what they paid for.
yeah, and almost indestructible for the most part. And so somebody's willing to pay a pretty decent price tag when it has ORA's name on it, as opposed to, you know, just a random kind of, this looks like a nice.
But Donna, how do they know they're getting an ORA coral?
Yeah.
So the best way is to order from, you know, a local fish store who is, you know, consistently bringing in ORA livestock.
What's that coral growing on, though?
I'm building into it.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, it's our trusted black ORA frag
Oh
plug.
yeah.
Hobbyist favorite black plug.
I am not
favorite.
I am not a fan of those frag plugs, but they are very unique. That's true, and that's how you know you get an ORA frag with that frag plug. That's a tough frag plug.
So going back to your pearlberry example, absolutely. There are a number of kind of fake pearlberries out there.
Yeah.
If you want the one that is kind of from the pictures, you know, that you remember from your childhood, the glory days, you know, make sure it comes on one of those ORA plugs for sure.
Yeah,
You can cut it off if you need to, but
Oh yeah.
it's on that ORA plug and well encrusted. That's a telltale sign that it's coming from our facility.
So what is the story behind that plug? Why haven't you guys? Obviously, you've heard the feedback about the plug being a little ornery for hobbyists, but why have you guys stuck with that plug?
It's utilitarian, 100%.
Right.
It's more for us than it is for the hobbyist or even the local fish store. You know, similarly to most people out there, especially aquaculture facilities, we're using egg crate. It's cost effective, and when you have trays of, you know, hundreds of corals, you need a way to mount them to where they're not shifting all over the place. We use surge devices, so you know, the flow is extensive and it's back and forth. If we had them just simply on frag plugs that didn't fit securely within those squares of the egg crate, or even discs, they'd be tossed around and they'd probably be in rough shape by the time they got to you.
I hear you. Dave just said, I recently picked up an ORA Laura's Purple Polyp Acropora from TSA.
Beautiful. That's a good one.
I've never had that one. I remember I used to have, and I think Abe from Coral Euphoria has this one, the ORA Purple Plasma, right? That's an ORA.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really cool coral. And are you guys any new and exciting acros that you guys are farming, new releases that potentially us hobbyists will be seeing out in the marketplace soon, or?
What's your favorite one?
My favorite is, I don't know.
Juicy Grape.
No, okay. Well, Juicy Grape, I really love the name because, you know, I came up with it. But
what's it called?
You know, the Juicy Grape.
Juicy Grape.
Yeah.
What is a Juicy Grape?
I believe it's an Acropora humilis. So you get those real nice, thick, broad, finger-like branches, real compact, but you're getting like the most intense purple, the most intense green in between the branches.
And it's fuzzy all the time.
Yeah, no, it's a great piece. People are going to really love it.
It's interesting because I think I was just talking about this with a prior guest. I can't remember what conversation I was having, but just you never see the humulus out there anymore. That's a very, you know, it used to come in like wild caught,
So cool.
and
Yeah.
you just don't see that in terms of the aquaculture corals. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to try to track one of those down.
Yeah.
So here's a question that Rolly's Reef Ranch had back at the beginning of the show. I know ORA frags corals differently, basically splitting frags in half, then let it grow to double repeat. Just curious if they can explain this methodology instead of growing out large colonies. Is that a correct assumption, statement?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I mean, your standard aquaculture model is to bring in a bunch of wild colonies, grow them out, cut those branches off, frag those, and then, you know, you're done. The pieces that we have in production, some of them have been in production for the last 30, 40 years. I mean, they've been just frags of frags of frags. And for our model, that seems to work really well for us. And then we're able to move pieces around if we lose, you know, a tray of corals to some freak heat wave or a hurricane or something. You know, we've still got backup frags, and rather than, you know, lose the whole colony and then that's it. We can't find that anymore.
General question from Ghouls. Does ORA have a distributor in Canada?
Yeah, we've got several. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say mostly in the kind of more Toronto, Ottawa region. But we do have partners kind of on the other coast as well in British Columbia.
Gotcha. Folks, feel free to drop any questions in the chat for both Jordan and Donna. Really appreciate them being on the live stream and entering our questions. Question from Blue Reef. ORA, okay, that's not a question. Talking about the success with Goniopora. Has that been something that you guys have, you know, I haven't really been following in terms of what you guys have been doing with the, you know, with Goniopora. I mean, I know personally, in my experience, it's been a lot easier to keep Goniopora, Alveopora these days because it's all like aquaculture. Is that the case with you guys? You know, I know years ago when, you know, you would go to a local fish store, there would be like these wild flower pot corals that come in and would look fantastic. They were like full colonies, yet they were almost impossible to keep in a tank for more than 4 or 5 months. Is in terms of what you guys are farming for Gonies and Alves, is that you know, pretty much it become a lot easier to produce and to sell those types of corals?
Say kind of our iconic ORA red Goniopora is kind of fits that bill right there. It's essentially bulletproof. It's one we've had in production for many years. I think it's the one coral that customers always say, you know, similar experiences to you, where, you know, they've tried the wild caught ones, they just don't do well. Our red one is bulletproof. I mean, it does very well long term.
Gotcha.
And it's gorgeous. It's red with little purple dots in the tentacles. It's fantastic.
Very cool. Talk to us about, you know, so we're talking about Gonies and Alveopora. What else do you guys have in terms of, you know, LPS and soft corals that you guys are raising captively?
These are your favorite.
Oh, I mean, let's start with LPS. You know, we have a number of LPS coming from our Marshall Island facility. You know, we've started with clams, and now we're, you know, doing SPS as well as LPS out there, and a number of soft corals. I would say, you know, we have lobophilias coming in now that we're mariculturing, you know, out there, and then we have torches and hammers. Those are everybody's, you know, favorite LPS.
Pectinias.
Yeah.
And then as far as soft corals, chalices, great. Yeah. We've been working with gorgonians for soft corals, mushrooms of many different types and colors. A lot of your sarcophytans. So you've got your toadstools, you've got your leathers, you've got your simularias.
Zoanthids.
Zoanthids, yeah. You name it, we've got it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, it's obviously great to have that kind of, you know, variety of corals available that you can aquaculture and make available to the local fish stores. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's now more easier than ever to have just a completely 100% aquacultured aquarium, you know, where nothing came from the wild.
I think a soft coral is just as important as, you know, the SPS and the LPS in terms of the hobby.
They're overlooked all the time, but man, they look good.
It gets you into the hobby, you know, who didn't start out with green star polyps or, you know, a small patch of xenia and watch it explode in their tank, but be so like enthralled with that success that they wanted to expand into LPS. They wanted to learn how to maintain their systems better so that they could eventually have a full SPS tank or a mixed reef. I mean, a full soft coral tank is just as striking as a full SPS tank. You know, it offers that color, that movement, and overall,
For sure.
yeah, I mean,
And they're a lot,
can't go wrong.
and they're a lot easier to keep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there's a question here from Sammy31D about using those large surge systems in your facilities. They were so cool. Question is, are you guys still using them? And I think that's a good springboard to kind of get into how you guys in terms of what kind of equipment you use to grow your corals. But you guys still using the large surge systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think people would be very surprised to know that we run our coral farm with very simple and very similar pieces of equipment than a home aquarium. Sometimes I would say far less technical. I mean, you've got people now with all the different toys you can get, but really for water motion, yeah, we do use the Carlson Surge device. Fantastically simple, but it moves a tremendous amount of water with very little electrical usage. Yeah. When it comes to lighting, this close to the ocean where we're currently located, any LED we would try to do would just turn into a very expensive paperweight very quickly. I mean, it's just a very caustic environment with all this salt. And we're very fortunate that we live where we do in Florida, where it's sunny every day. So that takes care of a lot of the needs of our corals out in the greenhouse for sure.
So now
you do a lot of.
So it's natural sunlight is how all your corals are essentially being lit.
Yeah, and it's really remarkable going out to the greenhouse. I mean, just seeing the natural colors, without any kind of influence from a lower spectrum light or higher spectrum, I should say. It's really, really pretty.
What kind of par are those corals getting, with the natural sunlight? And can you guys moderate that par by, I guess, putting up screens or something?
They get all the par, 10,000 par. I don't. It's a lot. It really is intense. I mean, it's. We utilize screens over some corals and then sometimes double screens. Sometimes we have to move corals from different locations because the sunlight is just too intense. I would say that we don't kind of worry about par on a day-to-day basis. Corals grow just fine. I mean, they're getting blasted with plenty of light.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay, we talked about lighting, flow. What about like calcium and alkalinity additions? What do you guys utilize there?
Fortunately, we're located where we are. We have access to a saltwater well. So the water we're using contains kind of everything we need, kind of all in one. So we're not really having to add additional things to help these corals grow.
So in terms of supplementing alkalinity and calcium, you guys are not really doing much other than water changes. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, it's remarkably stable.
Wow, interesting. And what about like nutrient control?
I mean, if anything, we have to feed some of the fish that live in these coral troughs. But there's no real kind of active, we got to get phosphates out. We got to get high nitrates out. I mean, we're moving a lot of water through these systems, but they're not operating on the same kind of closed environment like a home aquarium.
Gotcha.
So we're not having to do any kind of nutrient control really.
So what kind of exchange are you guys doing with water that you're bringing in close from where you are? I mean, is it like on a percentage basis, like if you're calling this a water change, what kind of percent water change would you guys be doing on the facility every week? 5%, 10%?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of the water that we are removing is just being used transporting fish from building to building and then being replenished as kind of a water exchange. We do filtration flushes and stuff like that, but I mean, the goal for our facility for sure is to use as little water as possible. I mean, so that number is definitely decreasing over time.
What about like coral food and aminos? Do you guys dose that stuff?
It would add probably a considerable amount of money to our operating costs if we were having to do that. But no, these corals, the clams, they're really doing a remarkable job just growing with kind of the available nutrients in the water.
Gotcha. And so no like trace elements or anything? Are you guys doing a lot of ICP testing or just not concerned?
So we do have a very rigorous testing. We've got a lot of, it's almost daily, where they are testing all the parameters, just making sure everything's fine. But I mean, remarkably, things stay just fine with the water that we are using.
Blue Reef is wondering specifically in terms of the water chemistry. What do you know what you're keeping your alkalinity and nitrates at? Natural seawater or?
I would say, yeah, it's very close to natural seawater. If anything, our salinity tends to be a little bit lower. Maybe, 1.021, 22 at times. But everything else, I think you're going to find very, very kind of online with traditional aquarium parameters.
Gotcha. All right, some random questions from the viewers here. Red Slacker, do they think there will ever be a time when the hobby is 100% aquacultured?
Oh, for sure. I think so.
No.
I think there will be a hobbyist
No,
bringing in.
No, it's just the hobby being out of it.
Okay, I thought he meant like
No.
hobbyists, like having fully aquacultured systems.
You can do that now, but
That's what I was going to
okay,
say.
yeah. But as I hope we don't get to the day where we are completely dependent on aquaculture, because our options will be very limited as far as the animals we would be able to have.
Yeah, for sure. Blue Reef, how did Joe the Coral get its name?
Oh man. God, what is that story?
It's a cool looking coral, cool looking acro.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece. Gosh, I don't remember where that came from. I want to say it was named for one of the employees in the coral greenhouse. I think that's what I remember.
I might have Googled that one at one point, and I think you might be right. It might have been named after an employee or something.
Yeah, and I mean some of the names, are just kind of have fun origins. Laura's purple polyp, for example, was named after one of our employees here. I like the Carl because, as ridiculous as it is, it's, if you're a Walking Dead fan, there are plenty of memes out there where Rick is calling his son Carl, and so it's Carl for the coral. So we'll explain later.
Yeah, I mean, Paul B is wondering what's the highest end ORA acropore that you guys have. So I guess which ORA acro right now is fetching the highest price, or is there one? Or are they? I always recall them being pretty close to price to one another.
Proberry.
Yeah, Proberry I think will always be like that top end.
It's extremely slow growing. It's absolutely beautiful. But really, it's at the end of the day, it's a very slow growing coral. I mean, similar with Oregon tort, we get asked that all the time. When's that going to be available? It is painfully slow growing, and so it's going to take a long time to get. We could sell 2 or 3 frags, but then we wouldn't have anything for the next 5 years. So the goal with any of the pieces we raise are, we have to be able to have these at a commercial scale so that everyone can get one if they want one.
I thought I saw some prices for the ORA Proberry, like the $200 to $300 range. Does that sound like totally out of whack, or is that possibly?
That's pretty close.
Really? Wow.
I think retail, yeah, that's about right.
Man, I remember back when you guys released that Proberry. I think it was like a $40 to $50 acro, right? It wasn't. I don't think it was like that crazy price, but maybe it's because there's all these imitators out there these days, and you got to make sure you get the real deal.
Yeah, I mean that definitely comes into play for sure.
Paul B, is the Easter egg chalice ORA? Easter egg chalice.
Just a beautiful
production.
Still in production. Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, Abe. Coral Euphoria for that super chat, Abe. Really appreciate it, man. Folks, any other questions for our guest tonight? Just drop in the chat. Do you guys have anything else? Did we miss anything that you guys have in terms of products that you wanted to talk about? I think we've covered a wide array of what you guys produce, but yeah.
I have a question for you.
You got a question for me?
So, yeah. So, like earlier in our discussion, we were talking about, what hobbyists are requesting in terms of fish that they want to see us produce. What's that one fish that you'd like to see us produce?
Oh, there you go. What about you, Keith?
Well, yeah, in terms of captive raised fish, wrasses would be pretty cool. And yellow tangs.
For sure. Which one?
I love the leopard wrasses. So the black leopard wrasse, black spotted leopard wrasse, that's the real name. The African leopard wrasse, and the Chioti leopard wrasse.
Oh, you like those little guys?
That's awesome. I mean, they're very, very hard to keep. I mean, yeah, what's the likelihood of you guys being able to, raise those captively? Are they challenging wrasses? Especially
we talked about this the other day. Yeah, I mean, I would say wrasses are challenging. I mean, at least from a broodstock perspective. At least from my understanding, they all want to become male. And so you get a bunch of broodstock in, you have them in a tank. Before you know it, you have only males. They only fight. And it's just that's the struggle. That's the barrier we have to kind of get over, is getting these fish to not change their sex.
Yeah. Getting a couple more requests here for fish. Anthony Martinez, Moorish Idol.
Oh, okay.
Jose Guido. Yeah, Jose Guido, Midas Plenty. You guys don't have a Midas Plenty?
We've definitely worked with them before. I mean, they're a fun little fish.
The Reef Farmer. Any Alicorus wrasse? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Ooh, what are the common names for that one? I mean, I recognize the genus, but
oh, here's one I love. Blue Reef, Japanese mass swallowtail angelfish. I love those fish. How hard would it be to raise those captively?
That would be more of a question for our production team. I mean, they're the ones who are kind of faced with these challenges. Going back to your earlier point, I mean, it is, all the easy fish typically, I feel like, have already really been done. I mean, the real struggle now is finding those fish that are kind of on the peripheral, the fish that people don't think about as even worth raising in aquaculture. But I think there's a lot of possibility out there. There's a lot of there's still a lot of discoveries to be made, especially with the particular foods that these fish need at certain life stages.
Yeah, Bert Minshew, Australian copper bands. So yeah, well, there's a lot of cool fish out there that
there's so many. There are.
We're constantly making lists. I just sent him a list the other day, fish to consider. So I mean, we're constantly thinking about new introductions into our broodstock and how we can get those into a commercial scale.
So we hear you. We know what you want. We're trying. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Nyoko, pronounce that right? Wrasse is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
More of the East. I'm having a real hard time pronouncing these names. The Eastcanenis Blennies.
Oh, okay.
Eastcaneus?
Yeah, so that's like the Red Sea Member Blenny. That's the one that we always get asked about. When's that one going to be back again?
Yeah.
Hopefully one day.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be like the top 3 on the list right now? You mentioned yellow tangs are always requested, but what would you say besides 3 others besides the yellow tang?
Top 3 that are requested, or the top 3 that we think?
How about both?
Kind of.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Top 3 requested. I mean, definitely would be every tang. It's not just yellow tangs. I mean, we should yellow tang, gem tangs, powder blues, hippos. I mean, all tangs. Let's just put tangs in.
Nobody's asked us for the Scopus tang, but I want a Scopus tang.
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind a coal tang either. I think any coal tang or any tang would be a success, especially if it's on a commercial scale.
Yeah.
And then second in line to that would be probably angels.
Always angels. Any of the angels. Pygmy angels.
Any of the angels. And then I have had ruby red dragonets brought up a number of times.
Those guys are awesome.
Past
and maybe soon.
Yeah.
You know, here's one that I haven't seen yet before in the comments. Sammy31D, hardy sunburst anthias. Yeah, what about anthias? I mean, I know anthias. A lot of anthias are very tough to keep, you know, in a reef tank. How
another one of those kind of wrasse-like fish where they all turn male. But we did have a really good run of your lyre-tail anthias. That was
2 years ago.
2 years ago at this point. Stunning fish, great fish. One of those kind of quintessential iconic fish you always see in pictures, and you know you'd love to see in your aquarium with those big schools. And they are so adorable when they're tiny.
Yeah.
The reef farmer Potter's Angel under 3.
I was just asked about that today.
Yeah, I like Potter. Where do they go? Why don't more people have that fish? They're so cool.
I love Potter's Angels. I mean,
why, obviously, but
they're not actually Japanese pygmy angel. See, Donnie asked me that question. You're getting a lot more answers than you bargained for there, right?
Yeah.
One thing I haven't, even mentioned in this stream is like the marine beta. We get that one all the time. And the Bengai cardinals.
Another
That is one that we've had in production, and we could literally.
We could retire on Bengai cardinals alone.
We could.
Barrett Gross Sr. Seen you guys at Reefapalooza in Orlando. Love the knowledge you guys freely shared. Very cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I saw you guys at MACNA. You guys had an awesome little setup there at MACNA. You guys pretty much try to hit as many trade shows as you can, possibly in a year. I know there's a lot of them.
I'd say no.
No, as far as showing, we don't show at many. It's typically like 2 or 3 shows a year. But we love to walk shows, just as hobbyists.
And it's great. I mean, that's for me, like MACNA in particular, just a fantastic time to sit and talk with aquarists. I mean, I'm an aquarist myself. It is awesome to just nerd out and talk about fish for a while.
Yep.
Corals even.
Yeah, that was the first MACNA I'd ever been to, so it was really cool to finally get to one. Yeah, it was it was great too because of all the different talks and had a great lineup of speakers. So, yeah, anybody that was thinking about going to a MACNA, definitely check it out. But all the other shows are great too. The Reefapaloozas are good, and I've never been to a what's the show? Yeah, I've never been to an Aquashella show. It seems like those are
it's an experience.
Have you guys
have a freshwater bone in you still? Aquashella is a very great mix for that, freshwater and saltwater.
Yep.
Right, and you guys don't do any freshwater at this point, right? No plans.
No.
That was a hard no.
I mean, why not? I mean, we have a guy here who's very passionate about cichlids, and so we dabbled with some cichlids and some discus. But more of kind of a pet project. I mean, the whole state of Florida is very good at aquaculturing your freshwater fish and cichlids. Yeah.
So what does the future hold for ORA? What can we expect years down the road? Is there a grand plan in terms of expansion, or are you guys going to just kind of hold the line and keep humming along like you are right now? Is there any thing that you guys can share about potentially the future and some changes, or no?
I mean, really, our policies have been kind of what's kept us going for the last 25 years. Our goals are to support brick and mortar stores, provide a aquaculture alternative to the home-based aquarist. If anything, I'd like to see us expand more in kind of our maricultured items, expanding our connection with some of the clam farmers out in the South Pacific, really providing a source of income for them and a source of purpose for kind of the animals that they can raise, and then making sure that these animals are finding, good quality homes here in the United States.
Anything that, in terms of corals, that you guys are not captively raising that you would like to get into? Is there any corals out there that have eluded you to this point?
I mean, at some point we've tried everything, but I mean, some of the ones that I think would make people happy, you know, scalemias, you know, those kind of big fleshy, you know, symphilias, any of those kind of big fleshy, really hot LPS right now are really great. But, you know, on a production scale, they're very slow growing. You know, they're not the same as growing a Acropora frag. And I think that's kind of sad.
I mean, they take up a lot of real estate too. You know, we have currently one variety of acan on our list, and I think if we had a wider variety of acans, it may kind of entice those local fish stores to bring in more of a variety as well. I'm an acan lover, so I'm gonna go for the acans every time. But those, I think, if we were able to find broodstock of, you know, torches, frog spawns, hammers, yeah, those would be definitely great to do as well. But again, takes up a lot of real estate
and time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Bert, you mentioned acanthos, you know, the acanthophilias, the meat corals.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty,
yeah, I mean, a lot of the corals that we raise and you can buy at a store, I mean, it takes years to get to that point.
Right.
I mean, better part of 10 years at times to really have enough sustainable population going where we can sell, you know, hundreds all across the United States and not run out.
Right. Yep, for sure. All right, guys. Well, listen, I think we'll wrap it up. Do you any final words for folks? I mean, obviously we talked a lot about local fish stores, so if folks want to find ORA corals and fish, they should probably ask their local fish store if they're not already bringing in your stuff to do so, and you could also get them online, right?
Yeah, so that, and don't be afraid to reach out. You know, Don and I, you know, people are always surprised when they call us and we answer the phone. You know, so by all means, call us. Let's chat. You know, let's help you get what you're looking for into your home aquarium, where we coordinate with just a vast network of stores across the United States, in Canada, Puerto Rico, other countries even. So just give us a ring, send us an email, reach out on Instagram.
We'll get you covered.
Yep, we got you.
I might be calling you guys for an authentic pearlberry.
Pearlberry, and we'll find you a black and white Maxima as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Of course.
That would be awesome. All right. Well, listen, I really want to thank both Jordan and Donna for being on today's live stream. And I also want to thank both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine for sponsoring the show. And again, I want to thank you folks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Finally, a big thank you to Paul, the moderator. Also want to let you know that all episodes of Rappin with ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. My next Rappin with ReefBum live stream will be on Thursday, October 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Philip Rosh from KP Aquatics. It should be another great show. The full upcoming schedule of guests is on reefbum.com under the YouTube section. And I will also be having a live coral show right here on YouTube on Sunday, October 23rd at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please tune in for that. Until then, be safe, be well, and we will see you next time.